My son-in-law thought he could stroll into my new home with a stolen key, smile in my face, and tell me which tiny room I'd be comfortable in, all while planning to take the deed out from under me. 3 weeks later, the cameras I installed caught him red-handed, trying that same key again. That was the moment everything changed, because this time, I was waiting on the other side of the door. Before I continue, I'd be truly grateful if you'd subscribe and tell me where you're listening from. Every story I share carries a piece of a life hard-earned, years of mistakes, lessons, and the kind of wisdom that only comes with time. Your support reminds me that even the quiet voices, the older ones, still have stories worth hearing. Now, let me tell you how one father's generosity became the perfect trap for two men who thought they could outsmart him. My name is George Whitmore, and for most of my 67 years, I believed in doing things the right way. I built my life with my own two hands, 40 years in construction, through snow, heat, and bone-tired evenings where the hammer felt like an extension of my arm. Every nail I drove, every wall I raised was meant to last. That's how I was raised, and that's how I lived. My late wife, Helen, used to say that I built homes the same way I built relationships, slow, steady, and meant to endure. She was right. When she passed away, it was like the foundation of my world cracked. The silence in the house wasn't peace anymore. It was emptiness. The walls still smelled faintly of her perfume, her coffee cup still sat by the sink, and that old rocking chair by the window creaked at night like it missed her too. After the funeral, my son Daniel became my lifeline. He'd stop by after work, bring me leftovers from his wife's dinners, ask about the house. I thought he was checking in because he cared. Maybe part of him did. But now, when I look back, I see the pattern. He wasn't just visiting, he was studying me, watching my habits, noticing the things I still managed on my own, and the things I didn't. Then came Ryan, Daniel's brother-in-law, smooth talker. Always with a compliment, always just trying to help. He'd slap me on the back and say things like, "You've earned some peace, George. You shouldn't be rattling around this old place alone." His words sounded kind, but there was a slickness to them. The kind you don't notice until it's too late. One afternoon, over coffee, Daniel leaned forward and said, "Dad, you should do something meaningful with Mom's insurance payout. You can't just let it sit in the bank. Maybe buy a new place, start fresh." Ryan jumped right in with that salesman grin. "Yeah, somewhere beautiful. Something that'll make you excited again. You've worked hard your whole life. You deserve it." I nodded politely, not realizing that while I thought they were encouraging me to live a little, they were already planning to take everything I had left. A few weeks later I found it, the Maplewood Estate. Colonial style, tall white pillars, a porch that wrapped around like an embrace. 5 fireplaces, big kitchen, acres of quiet land. The first time I stepped inside, the floors creaked under my boots like they were welcoming me home. For the first time since Helen's death, I could breathe again. I imagined holidays there, Daniel and his family visiting, laughter in the dining room, grandchildren chasing each other through the garden. It felt right. It felt like something Helen would have wanted. So I bought it, quietly, under a private trust, using the insurance money she'd left me. And I told no one. Not Daniel. Not a soul. For 6 weeks, contractors worked day and night. I spent every morning walking through those rooms, watching them come alive, new paint, polished wood, a kitchen Helen would have loved. It was supposed to be a gift, a surprise, a new chapter for my family. I imagined handing Daniel the keys and saying, "This is for you, to carry forward what your mother and I built. But peace is fragile. It never announces when it's about to end." Because while I was building a home for my family, they were building a plan to take it from me, and that quiet life I was so proud of, it was about to be ripped wide open. The morning I planned to surprise them was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. I woke up early, brewed my usual black coffee, and stood by the kitchen window of my old house, watching sunlight creep across the yard. My hands shook a little, not from age, but from excitement. I was finally ready to show Daniel and Ryan the home I'd bought for all of us. I called Daniel, smiling as I said, "How about lunch today, son? There's something I want to show you." But his tone on the other end wasn't excitement, it was hesitation. "Actually, Dad," he said. Ryan and I are looking at houses today. We think we found one that could be perfect for us. Something in my chest tightened. Oh, where at? I asked. He paused, too long to be casual. A colonial on Maplewood Avenue. 6 bedrooms, big kitchen, quiet neighborhood. Only problem is, it's way out of our price range. I froze. Maplewood Avenue. My house. I forced a small laugh. That does sound beautiful, I said evenly. Why don't you text me the address? I'll meet you there. Half an hour later, I parked across the street from my own property and watched from the truck. Ryan was pacing the front lawn, phone pressed to his ear, talking about renovation plans. Daniel stood beside him with a tape measure, jotting numbers on a pad. They weren't touring the place. They were claiming it. Ryan waved when he spotted me. George, you made it, he called, flashing that polished smile. Isn't this place perfect? I walked up the drive slowly, every step heavier than the last. Inside, the air smelled of new paint and polished wood, the work I'd overseen myself. Ryan led the tour like a proud realtor. Look at this kitchen, he said, running his hand across the marble counters I'd chosen. This'll be perfect for dinner parties. And this, he gestured upstairs, this master suite will be ours. We'll put you in the smaller room near the stairs. Less walking for you. My jaw tightened. Small but adequate, he said, smiling. I wanted to see if Daniel would correct him. He didn't. He just nodded. By the time we reached the living room, I could hardly hear their chatter over the ringing in my ears. My house, my money, my trust. Then Daniel said the words that cemented everything. Dad, maybe you could help with the down payment? Consider it an early inheritance. My stomach turned. Early inheritance. I had worked 4 decades to give my family stability, and now my own son was asking for a slice of my life while I was still breathing. I kept my voice calm. That's a lot of money, son. Ryan stepped in smoothly. It's not just money, George. It's an investment, a chance to be close to family again. Think about it. You'd live here too. Peaceful, quiet, safe. The way he said safe made my skin crawl. When I asked about financing, Ryan sighed like a man inconvenienced. Cash only, he said. Seller's rule. Something about a trust situation. No loans, no delays. That was almost poetic. Trust situation. I smiled, pretending to think it over. Let me sleep on it, I said, shaking Daniel's hand. That night I couldn't sleep at all. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. They weren't just manipulating me. They were planning to strip me of every last piece of what Helen and I built. By dawn, I'd made a decision. When Daniel called that morning, his voice was urgent. Dad, we have to move fast. Another family's about to make an offer. If you're serious, we need the full payment today. I leaned back in my chair. That's unfortunate, I said slowly. Dad, please. This is the perfect home for our family. You'll love it too. I interrupted. If I'm investing this kind of money, I'll talk to the realtor myself. He hesitated. Ryan's already been handling that. He's got a good rapport with the agent. Maybe let him handle it? My voice turned cold. Daniel, if I'm wiring $400,000, I'll handle it myself. He went silent, then muttered, Okay, sure, Dad, whatever you say. The moment I hung up, I called my property manager. Sarah, I said, relist the house immediately. Same terms. And if anyone calls asking about it, tell them the previous deal fell through. Why relist it? Because I need to know just how far my family is willing to go. 2 hours later, Daniel called again. His voice was brighter this time. Good news, Dad. The other offer was rejected. We can still get the house, but we need to move fast. I smiled to myself. That's wonderful news, I said calmly. Let's meet tomorrow with the realtor to finalize things. Ryan's voice came faintly in the background. Or, it might be faster if he wires the money first. I hung up. That evening I drove back to Maplewood to think. But when I turned the corner, my headlights caught a familiar sight. Ryan in the driveway with a woman I didn't recognize. Clipboard. Notepad. Measuring tape. And then I saw it. He pulled a key from his pocket and unlocked my door. I sat in the truck, watching him stroll into my house like he owned it. That was the moment everything inside me changed. The grief, the patience, the loyalty, all burned away. What replaced it wasn't anger. It was focus. Because I realized something very simple. They thought I was too old to fight back. And that's when I decided I would not stay silent. That night, I sat in my old living room surrounded by ghosts. The clock ticked louder than usual. The air felt heavier. And the silence, it wasn't peaceful anymore. It was judgmental. The kind that stares you in the face and asks, "How could you let it get this far?" I held my coffee cup in both hands just to stop them from trembling. I wasn't shaking from fear. I was shaking from betrayal. The image of Ryan using that stolen key kept replaying in my head. His smug grin, his confident stride, the sound of my door opening under his hand. That door had always been a symbol of safety. Now it was a reminder that I'd been naive. The phone buzzed. First Ryan, then Daniel. I ignored the first call, but when my son's name appeared again, I answered. "Dad," Daniel said, voice careful. "There's been a misunderstanding. Ryan only had the key to check on renovations." He didn't mean anything by it. My jaw clenched. "A misunderstanding," I said quietly. "Tell me, son, does showing my home to strangers count as a misunderstanding too?" He hesitated. "What do you mean?" I said slowly. I watched him unlock my front door. I saw him walking through the rooms I paid for. I saw him measuring the dining room, as if planning where his furniture would go. There was a pause, long enough for me to hear the guilt breathing through the line. "Dad, please," Daniel whispered. "We just want what's best for the family." I let out a bitter laugh. "No, son. You want what's best for your family. There's a difference." I hung up before he could answer. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced the house, checking each window latch, running my fingers along the old wood banister I'd built myself years ago. Each creak felt like an echo from Helen's voice, steady, gentle, reminding me of what we'd built together. I stopped by our wedding photo on the mantel. Her smile, frozen in time, felt like a test. "You'd have known what to do," I whispered. "You'd have seen through them sooner. But grief makes fools of the strong, and love blinds even the wise." I had spent my entire life protecting others. I never thought I'd need to protect myself from my own blood. As dawn broke, I poured another cup of coffee and stared out the window. The world outside looked the same, but I didn't feel the same man who'd lived here yesterday. Something inside me had hardened. When the sunlight hit the floorboards just right, I made my decision. I drove to the Maplewood estate again, this time not to dream, but to observe. I parked far down the block and watched. Sure enough, Ryan's truck sat in the driveway. He wasn't done. He was back, walking around with that same woman, clipboard in hand, giving her a tour as if he already held the deed. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was theft in progress. When they left, I waited 15 minutes before pulling into the drive. The key in my hand slid into the lock easily. Inside, the air smelled like new paint, like opportunity, like justice waiting to happen. I called a locksmith immediately. By nightfall, every lock had been changed. Front, back, garage, even the gate. I paid extra to have reinforced bolts installed, steel grade. Next, I called a security company. Install cameras everywhere, I told them. Every door, every angle. I didn't care about the cost. I cared about control. That night, I sat in the study, watching the live feed on my phone. Midnight, 2 a.m., 5 a.m. Nothing, until at 7:30, the motion alert pinged. Ryan stood at the front door. He tried his key. Once, twice, his face twisted in confusion. He tried the back door, muttering into his phone. Frustration building. I turned up the volume. "Yeah, man," Ryan said, voice low. "The locks are changed. Someone must have moved in." Moved in? Daniel's voice came faintly through the speaker. "That doesn't make sense." Ryan swore under his breath. "We'll figure it out." I sipped my coffee and smiled. An hour later, Daniel called me, pretending concern. "Dad, Ryan thinks squatters might have broken into that Maplewood house. He saw the locks were changed." "Why would Ryan be checking on a house we don't own?" I asked. "Silence." "Then, he thought he saw broken windows. I looked around at the pristine glass panes gleaming in the morning sun. "There are no broken windows," I said, "because I'm sitting inside the house right now." The line went dead quiet. "Your house?" Daniel finally whispered. "Yes," I said calmly. "The one I bought 6 weeks ago with your mother's insurance money. The one your friend has been trying to steal." The breath caught in his throat. I ended the call before he could stammer a single excuse. That night, for the first time in months, I slept without fear. The locks were changed. The cameras were rolling. My home was safe. But safety wasn't the same as justice. And by the next morning, I knew exactly what I had to do. Because now the betrayal wasn't hurting anymore. It was motivating me. And that's when I began to think very carefully. When Daniel showed up the next evening, I could see the guilt before he even opened his mouth. He stood in my living room like a boy again, hands fidgeting, eyes red, shoulders heavy with shame. "Dad," he began softly. "I didn't know how far Ryan went. I thought he was helping. He said you wanted him to take care of things for you, that you didn't want to deal with paperwork." I stayed quiet. Silence is a powerful thing. It makes liars hear their own words louder. He went on, "Ryan must have gotten a key from the property manager's assistant. He told her he was checking the renovations for the family. I swear I didn't know." I looked at him, really looked at him. "You didn't think it was strange that your business partner had a key to a house you didn't own?" Daniel swallowed hard. I trusted him. I thought we were doing the right thing. "For you." I nodded slowly. "You trusted him," I repeated, "just like I trusted you." He dropped his head. I could see the battle behind his eyes, the son who knew better versus the man who didn't act on it. "Dad, please," he said, voice trembling. "We just wanted to build something together. Ryan took it too far." I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, and said quietly, "You mean the part where he called the master bedroom his and offered me the small one near the stairs? That part too far?" Daniel looked up, startled. "He said that?" "He did," I said, "and you nodded." The color drained from his face. He sat there in silence while the truth finally sank in. After a while, I stood and poured him a glass of water. My tone was calm but sharp enough to cut. "I'm not pressing charges yet, but understand this, Daniel. What Ryan did wasn't just shady. It was criminal. And if you were part of it, even by standing by and saying nothing, you're not innocent." He looked terrified. "Dad, I'll fix this. I promise." "I'm counting on that," I said. "But you should know, I'm done being the old man everyone assumes is easy to fool." When he left that night, I felt no anger, just focus. The kind of cold clarity you only earn after a lifetime of being underestimated. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Mr. Harlow, a man I'd known since Helen's days volunteering at the courthouse. He listened quietly as I explained everything: the impersonation, the false claims, the stolen key. When I finished, he whistled softly. "George, what they did falls under elder financial exploitation. You've got enough to take them both to court." I smiled faintly. "Not yet, Harlow. I'm not looking for revenge in a courtroom. I want them to see what they almost destroyed." He chuckled. "Sounds like you've got a plan." "I do," I said, "and it starts with letting Ryan think he's still in control." So I played the fool. When Daniel called, I spoke kindly. When Ryan texted, I replied politely, as if nothing was wrong. I let them think I was naive. Meanwhile, I was securing every inch of my life behind the scenes. First, I had the deed reissued under an irrevocable trust, with Mr. Harlow as custodian. That meant not even I could alter ownership without his approval. Then I contacted my bank and filed an official fraud alert. Anyone claiming to act on my behalf would trigger immediate verification with law enforcement. Next, I reached out to the property management company. I explained what had happened and rerouted every bit of communication through me directly. No more family representatives, no more lies. Every safeguard was in place, and still I waited. It didn't take long. Ryan called from a new number, his voice oily as ever. "George, listen, I think there's been some confusion," he said, sounding almost sympathetic. "Daniel told me you were upset. I just wanted to clear the air. You know how families can be." I let him talk himself in circles. "You're right, Ryan," I said finally. "Families do get tangled, but you know what fixes confusion?" "What's that?" "Paperwork." He hesitated. "Paperwork?" "Yes, I've been working on a few new documents lately. Very thorough. Keeps everything crystal clear." The line went silent. "What kind of documents, George?" "The kind," I said evenly, "that ensure anyone pretending to act for me gets a personal call from the sheriff's office." Click. The call ended. I sat back and smiled. I kept every voicemail, every text, every apology. Ryan tried to sound calm, saying things like, "Let's put this behind us." Daniel tried to mediate, pleading for peace. But I knew the truth. Peace built on deception doesn't last. It rots. By the end of that week, I had every document filed, every safeguard in place, and every word they'd spoken recorded. The net was woven tight. They thought I was old, distracted, harmless. But what they didn't realize was that every scar, every wrinkle, every ache in my bones carried a lifetime of patience and precision. The kind you need when you're setting the perfect trap. The stage was set, and all I had to do was wait. The morning it all came to a head was quiet. The kind of Vermont morning where fog rests on the grass and the air smells of rain. I sat in my study with a fresh cup of coffee, watching the sunlight creep across my desk when the motion alert pinged on my phone. The security camera showed 2 vehicles pulling up to my gate. Ryan's black truck. Daniel's blue sedan right behind it. I smiled. "Showtime," I whispered. They rang the bell twice before I opened the door. I didn't rush. Let them wait. When I finally stepped outside, I said calmly, "Morning, gentlemen. Come in." Ryan walked in first, his eyes darting around, taking in the cameras on the walls, the polished floors, the confident way I stood in my own home. The man who once thought I was weak now looked nervous. His charm didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. Daniel followed behind, shoulders slumped, jaw tight. "Dad," Daniel began, voice low. "We just came to clear the air." "Perfect," I said, gesturing toward the couch. "Have a seat." On the coffee table sat a neat stack of papers, the property deed, the bank's fraud report, and a printed transcript of Ryan's voicemail from 2 nights earlier, where he'd offered to help handle the investment. The letterhead from my lawyer was right on top. Ryan's eyes flicked to the paperwork immediately. His grin faltered. "What's all this?" "Evidence," I said, taking a slow sip of my coffee. "Every false statement, every attempt to impersonate me, every word recorded for the prosecutor. You'll want to start with page 3, Elder Financial Exploitation," I said, tapping the header. "It's quite an educational read." Ryan's smile evaporated. Daniel sank deeper into his chair. "Dad, please," Daniel said quietly. "You don't need to do this." "Oh, I do," I said evenly. "Because I need both of you to understand what happens when you cross a man who's already lost everything once." Ryan's face tightened. "Look, maybe things got out of hand, I admit that. But we can make this right. Man to man." I nodded. "I agree. That's why I already handled it. Man to man." I slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a notarized letter from my lawyer, addressed to both of them. It stated in plain legal terms that any contact, interference, or attempt to represent me would result in immediate criminal prosecution for fraud and identity theft. Their names were already on file. Ryan stared at the document, then at me. "You actually filed this?" "Last week," I said, smiling faintly. "The same day you tried to use that key again." Daniel rubbed his forehead, eyes wet. "Dad, please, I never meant—" "You never meant to stop him either," I said, cutting him off. "That makes you a spectator to theft, not a son." Ryan stood suddenly. "You can't threaten us, old man. We were just trying to help you." I met his glare, calm and unflinching. "Help me? You tried to steal my home, Ryan. The house my wife's insurance paid for. You looked me in the eye and told me which room I'd be comfortable in. That's not help. That's arrogance." He opened his mouth to argue, but I pressed a button on my phone. The big screen on the wall flickered to life, playing the footage from my security system. There he was, Ryan on camera, fumbling with the door, trying his stolen key, peering through the windows, calling Daniel in frustration. The room went silent except for Ryan's own recorded voice echoing from the speaker. Daniel's face fell apart. Dad, I didn't know it had gone that far. It went exactly that far, I said. And if I hadn't been careful, you'd both have me living in the smallest bedroom of my own house while you built your fortune off my name. Ryan turned toward the door, muttering, "This isn't over." "Oh, it is," I said quietly. "The county sheriff has a full copy of everything, just in case you decide to get creative." He froze mid-step, then stormed out without another word. Daniel stayed behind, staring at the floor. "Dad," he said softly, "I don't know how to fix this." "You start," I said. "I don't know how to fix this." "You start," I said, "by being honest, by remembering your mother didn't raise a coward. She raised a man. Try being him again." He nodded, shame heavy in his voice. "Yes, sir." When he left, I stood there for a long time, letting the silence fill the space he'd left behind. No anger, no satisfaction, just peace, the quiet kind that comes when the truth finally wins. That evening, my lawyer called. "Everything's confirmed, George. The trust is sealed, and the files are secure. You're untouchable now." "Good," I said, looking out through the window. "That's exactly how I want it." As the sun dipped below the horizon, I stepped out onto the porch with a glass of whiskey. The air smelled of pine and wet earth. The roses Helen loved were blooming again, soft pink and proud. I sat there listening to the wind move through the trees, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel tired. I felt free. And in that silence, I finally felt free. It's been 6 months since that day, and in that time, the Maplewood estate has become more than a house. It's a sanctuary. The air feels lighter here now. The kind of quiet that once reminded me of loss has turned into something peaceful, almost sacred. Every morning I walk through the garden Helen would have loved. I kneel by the rose bushes and feel the earth between my fingers, the same way I used to when we planted our first flowers together decades ago. The scent of soil and sunlight, the hum of bees, the sound of birds greeting the day. It reminds me that healing doesn't always come from forgiveness. Sometimes it comes from reclaiming what's yours. Daniel calls me every Sunday now. At first, those calls were stiff and awkward. Apologies wrapped in small talk, shame hiding behind silence. But lately, something's changed. He's humbler now. He listens more than he speaks. I can hear it in his voice, the weight of what he almost lost, and the slow, careful work of trying to earn back what money could never buy: trust. As for Ryan, well, life has a way of balancing its own scales. Word got around that his contracting business went under. The last I heard, he left town after facing a few lawsuits that had nothing to do with me. Seems karma doesn't always need an invitation. It just shows up when it's due. My neighbors have become my family now. The young couple across the street brings me fresh bread on Sundays. The widow next door invites me for tea in the evenings. And the kids down the block call me Mr. Whitmore, with that kind of respect you don't hear much anymore. They don't want anything from me. No money, no property, no inheritance, just company, genuine company. Sometimes, as the sun sets over the maple trees, I think about everything that happened, the lies, the betrayal, the heartbreak, and I realize this was never just about a house. It was about dignity, about respect, about reminding myself and others that age doesn't make you weak. It makes you watchful. It makes you wise. The title of this story, I waited for them to leave. Then I changed every lock, isn't just about doors. It's about boundaries. It's about the moment you decide that peace doesn't come from keeping the wrong people close. It comes from locking them out. Because sometimes, the locks we change aren't made of metal. They're the invisible kind, the ones on our hearts, our patience, our forgiveness. So yes, I waited for them to leave. Then I changed every lock, and in doing so, I didn't just protect my house. I reclaimed my life. Would you have done the same if it were you? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of elder wisdom, justice, and quiet revenge.